I realized my girlfriend wasn't in love with me, she was in love with the man who came before me. 7 months into our relationship, I became the stand-in actor for her ex. Same habits, same gestures, the same standards she kept bringing up. I didn't lose her to another guy, I lost her to a memory she refused to bury. I met Sierra at a backyard cookout at Mason's place, the kind of relaxed, slightly chaotic weekend get-together where someone brings way too much beer, someone else nearly sets the grill on fire, and everyone laughs louder than they need to. The late afternoon sun spilled over the wooden fence, giving everything a warm haze, and the smell of searing meat drifted through the air. That's when Sierra walked in. She showed up a bit late, wearing a light denim jacket, her loose curls catching the last stretch of sunlight, and a smile that made the group fall quiet for half a breath. When Mason introduced us, I braced for the usual awkward exchange people do when they meet for the first time, but it didn't happen. Conversation between us just clicked, natural, effortless, like we'd picked up a discussion we somehow hadn't started yet. I'm Ethan, 28, a product designer for a small tech company in the city. Sierra worked in marketing for an independent fashion brand, confident, stylish, full of ideas, and the kind of person who could tell a story about buying groceries and somehow make it interesting. Our first 6 months were the classic honeymoon phase people swear only happens in movies: weekend trips to the mountains, spontaneous cabin getaways, nights with pizza and whatever show we could agree on, and the kind of comfortable silence you don't find often. My friends joked that for the first time in my dating life, I was actually living the relationship instead of analyzing it like a design problem. I believed them. I genuinely thought Sierra might be someone I could see a real future with. But then month 7 arrived, and something shifted. Not in an explosive, dramatic way, more like a subtle misalignment you can't quite name at first. It began with Lucas, Sierra's ex. At first it was harmless, almost casual. Lucas used to take me to this place. Lucas really knew his wine. Lucas loved hiking. He'd totally vibe with his trail. People mention their exes sometimes, it happens. I wasn't the jealous type, and I wasn't threatened. What caught my attention wasn't what she said, but the look in her eyes when she said his name. Not sadness, not bitterness, more like nostalgia, a soft glow, the kind someone gets when a memory is almost too sweet to let go of. I ignored it, once, twice, but then it kept happening, and gradually, her comments started slipping into moments that had nothing to do with Lucas at all. One night while we were watching a movie, right as the plot got tense, she said, "Lucas used to massage my shoulders during scenes like this. I got so used to it." Another time, I took her to a new tapas place, and she said, "Lucas picked restaurants so well. He had great taste." And when I cooked pasta for her one evening, she smiled and said, "Lucas learned this dish during his time in Italy, but he made it really well." Individually, each comment was fine, but collectively, spread across weeks, they cut in a way that was slow and precise. Like tiny paper cuts you don't notice until they start stinging all at once. So I did the healthy thing. I talked to her. I told her gently that the constant comparisons were starting to wear me down. Sierra apologized quickly. She said she didn't realize she was doing it and promised she'd be more mindful. And to her credit, she stopped for exactly 2 weeks. Then the shift happened. She went from mentioning Lucas to suggesting I act like him. "Could you leave cute little notes around the house?" Lucas used to do that, and it made me feel so cared for. Lucas and I had a house chore schedule that kept things fair. "Maybe we should try that. You should try dressing in layers." Lucas dressed really well. That was when the realization hit, not as a theory, not as a list, but as a quietly growing truth I couldn't ignore anymore. Sierra wasn't just sharing memories. She was using Lucas as a blueprint. Every suggestion pulled me a little further away from myself. Every comparison nudged me closer to a role I never signed up for. I felt myself slowly disappearing inside a mold she still wasn't done holding on to. The impact was subtle but heavy. I found myself questioning whether my actions were right or Lucas enough. Instead of asking whether they felt natural to me, it felt like being in a relationship with a phantom standing between us, a presence she never intended to let go, and the meaning behind it all finally hit. Sierra had never stepped out of her last relationship. Not truly, not emotionally. She wasn't dating me, she was dating the version of Lucas she hoped I could become. The worst part, I didn't realize how bad it would get. Month 7 was just the surface. If I had read someone else's story like this before it became mine, I might have recognized the red flags sooner. The real conflict exploded during what should have been a normal night at Mason's place. Our friend group was hanging out, drinking, talking about holiday plans. The vibe was easy until Lily casually asked, "So, what are you guys doing for Christmas?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Sierra jumped in before I could make a sound. With this excited, almost glowing tone, she said, "Lucas used to surprise me every year with a little Christmas getaway. He was always so thoughtful about it. I'm hoping Ethan will, learn from that." The room didn't go silent, it collapsed. Jamie blinked at me like someone had just thrown cold water in her face. Lily looked down and picked at her sleeve. Mason stared into his beer like it suddenly grew instructions printed at the bottom. And me, I forced a smile so stiff it felt like my face was made of plastic. Because what else could I do? Throw a scene in front of all our friends? Argue? Ask her why she thought that was okay to say out loud? It didn't matter how polite I was on the outside. Inside, something snapped. That night, when we got home, I sat down in the living room and asked Sierra the question I had been afraid to ask. Can you tell me more about your breakup with Lucas? She didn't hesitate. She didn't get sad. She didn't struggle. She lit up. And then she started telling me about her breakup the way someone might describe the finale of a beautifully written romance movie. She explained how Lucas had taken a month of mature distance, then brought her to her favorite restaurant, sat her down and come as a monk told her, I think I've outgrown this relationship. She called it the most beautiful breakup I've ever had, the most mature, the most respectful. She admired it. She praised it. She held on to it like it was some kind of emotional gold standard. And right then, something became painfully clear. Sierra hadn't left that relationship emotionally. She'd left it physically. She was still carrying the template of Lucas around like a handbook she expected me to follow. The next few weeks proved it. She referenced Lucas everywhere, in cooking, in travel, in communication, in conflict resolution, in lifestyle choices, even in how emotionally balanced he supposedly was. And each mention chipped a little more off my sense of self. It didn't feel like I was in a relationship with Sierra anymore. It felt like I was trying out for a role I didn't know existed. Then came the tipping point. We were at another friends gathering when Sierra spent nearly 20 minutes passionately describing the incredibly creative proposal Lucas had just done for his new girlfriend. Everyone just sat there stunned. Sierra's eyes shimmered while she talked, like she was reliving a moment that never belonged to her. Then she turned to me with a half-joking, half-earnest little smile and said, when you propose someday, I hope you'll do something at least on that level. Nobody laughed. Nobody even breathed. I felt the air thicken around me. In that instant, everything clicked into place with brutal clarity. I couldn't keep dating someone who used another man, her ex, as the measuring stick for my worth. I couldn't keep pretending that I wasn't losing pieces of myself with each comparison, each expectation, each memory forced onto me like a costume. And if Sierra worshipped Lucas's perfect breakup so much, then maybe the only way to break the spell was to give her exactly what she'd been romanticizing for so long. Not out of revenge, not to be cruel, but because it was the only language she seemed able to understand. And that thought, calm, quiet, terrifying, settled into me like a final decision I couldn't walk back from. After the night, Sierra talked about Lucas's proposal for 20 minutes straight, then casually hinted that she expected something on that level from my new I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I wasn't just competing with her ex. I was competing with a glorified, polished memory she had curated in her head. And memories don't lose. Memories don't mess up. Memories don't disappoint. So I started pulling back. Not dramatically. Not in a way meant to punish her. I just stopped overextending. I texted less. I didn't initiate every plan. I didn't fill every silence. A healthy partner would have noticed something shifting. But Sierra didn't see distance. She saw growth. She even laughed one night and said, "You've been really calm lately. It reminds me of how centered Lucas was." That sentence alone confirmed everything. My withdrawal wasn't a warning sign to her. It was a comfort, a familiar pattern, a reflection of someone else. That's when I decided, if Sierra wanted Lucas's perfect breakup, the one she praised so openly, then that's exactly what she would get. Not out of spite, not out of pettiness, but because she had spent months shaping me into a ghost, into a placeholder, into a reenactment of a man I never agreed to imitate. I made a reservation at the restaurant Sierra had described with such reverence, the one Lucas had chosen for their beautiful, mature breakup. The one she said marked the moment he outgrew the relationship. I didn't choose it to be cruel. I chose it to hold up a mirror she had refused to look into. When I invited Sierra to dinner, she dressed up more than usual. She greeted me with that hopeful smile people get when they're expecting good news. As soon as we sat down, she began reminiscing about the lighting, the food, the decor, even the exact table Lucas had picked for their 3-month anniversary. She wasn't fully here with me. She was talking from inside a memory. I listened quietly. Halfway through the meal, I put my glass down and met her eyes. "Sierra," I said, "these past months, I've learned a lot from the stories you've told me." She beamed. Actually beamed. "I knew you were growing. I can feel it." I nodded once. "I know exactly what I need to do now." She leaned forward, expecting some heartfelt promise. Instead, I spoke the line she had once recited with admiration. "I think I've outgrown this relationship, and I need to move forward." Her entire face went pale. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" Her voice cracked. "This isn't funny." I stayed gentle, calm, exactly how she had described Lucas. "I'm ending the relationship in the way you've always called perfect. .com/mature, respectful." Her breathing turned shaky. No, that's not Ethan. Stop. You're not him." And I said the truth I had avoided for too long. "But that's the problem. You never let me be me. You've been trying to turn me into him from day one." Her eyes filled instantly. Tears streaked down her cheeks, mixing with mascara. "You can't do this to me." I looked at her, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the clarity I should have had earlier. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm letting go of something you were never fully in. You weren't with me, Sierra. You were with the version of Lucas you wish you still had." She stood abruptly, her chair screeching so loudly the entire restaurant turned to look. Without another word, she rushed out, shaken, confused, collapsing under the weight of the very standard she had worshipped. But that wasn't the last time I saw her, not even close. 3 days later, she showed up at my door, eyes swollen, voice trembling. "Lucas never disappeared after the breakup. He talked things through. You owe me that." I stayed behind the door. We already talked. That night was the conversation. She left in tears, but the attempts didn't stop. 2 days later, she texted saying she'd accidentally found my antique watch in her apartment. Watch. I was absolutely certain I had left it home. She insisted I come get it so we could talk properly. I replied, "If that watch isn't in my mailbox by tomorrow morning, I'll report it stolen." The next morning it was there. A week later, she showed up at a group dinner with a literal PowerPoint presentation titled 8-Week Reconnection Plan Proven, affected by Lucas. Everyone froze. Every friend stared. And I pressed play on a voice recording I had saved Sierra describing Lucas's beautiful breakup in detail, praising the exact script I had repeated. Then I asked her one simple question. "When he did it, you called it maturity. When I did it, you called it cruelty. Why is that?" Sierra fell apart at the table. But even then, it wasn't over. She staged coincidental run-ins at coffee shops, restaurants, trails, sometimes even wearing the outfit from our first date, as if she could rewind the story. The final attempt happened at the gym. She approached me with a folder labeled, "Couples Therapy Exercise Plan Lucas Method." That was it. I looked straight at her and said, loud enough for there to be no misunderstanding, "You are harassing me. If you don't stop, I will file for a restraining order." This time, she froze. No tears, no begging, just silence heavy and hollow. She turned and walked away, and that was the last time she ever approached me. After Sierra walked out of the gym with that pale, stunned expression, I was almost certain it would be the last time she dragged me back into her cycle. But I had underestimated the strength of habit, fear of abandonment, and the emotional dependency she'd never once admitted. For days afterward, I lived in a strange mix of expectation and caution. Expectation that she might show up again, and caution that if she did, I needed to be clear-headed enough not to get pulled back into the endless fixing plans she kept designing based on Lucas. But unlike every previous attempt, this time Sierra went silent. No long paragraphs, no late-night calls, no sudden appearances outside my apartment. I didn't know if it was because my warning genuinely scared her, or because she finally recognized the mess we had both been dragged into. That silence, at first, was unsettling. It felt like entering a room that used to be unbearably loud, but when it suddenly goes quiet, you don't know what to do with the emptiness. I spent a few days relearning how to live without glancing over my shoulder every time I walked into a cafe, without bracing myself at the gym in case she appeared with another solution inspired by Lucas. And as the silence stretched on, something I hadn't felt in a long time started to return. Air. It was light, clear, and it didn't carry the weight of anyone else's memories. One quiet Sunday afternoon while making coffee, I realized I had gone almost a full week without thinking about Sierra in that heavy, anxious way. I didn't check my phone expecting a message from her. I didn't wonder whether I was being followed or monitored. I just lived, and that feeling was both strange and deeply freeing. My friends noticed too. Mason said, "Man, you're finally breathing again." Lily sighed in relief. Seriously, if this went on any longer, I was going to intervene. And Jamie simply patted my shoulder and said, "Welcome back to yourself." But healing wasn't just about being free from Sierra. It was about facing myself, the version of me I had allowed to be worn down over time. I started noticing how much I had changed while trying to meet standards that never belonged to me. The meals I cooked tasted like mine again. The way I dressed, the way I watched movies, the way I talked and walked, none of it was being molded into the shadow of Lucas anymore. I went back to the things I had neglected. Books, running, sitting alone in cafes with no purpose. Small things, but they made me feel like pieces of myself were being returned one by one. Then one day, Jamie texted me, "Sierra started therapy." I didn't know how she knew, but I believed it. And when she added the next sentence, something inside me quietly settled. She cried, saying, "I didn't love Ethan. I loved the version I thought he would try to become." I didn't feel happy because Sierra was hurting. I felt relieved because, finally, someone besides me understood the real problem, the problem I had tried to explain, tried to reason through, tried to communicate in every possible way, yet Sierra refused to hear at the time. One evening, I was cleaning my closet and found the small box where I had kept everything from our relationship. Ticket stubs, little notes, photos from our cabin trip. I sat down on the floor, placed the box in front of me, and waited to see what I felt. But I didn't feel pain, or regret, or anger, or affection, just a calm, muted neutrality, the kind that comes from finally stepping out of a maze without dragging any part of it with you. I closed the box, took it downstairs, dropped it into the trash bin, and walked away without looking back. No symbolic goodbye, no dramatic moment, just a quiet period at the end of a sentence. And for the first time in a very long time, I truly felt free. Not free from Sierra, but free from the version of myself I had lost when I tried to become someone in her unfinished story. In the end, I realized something simple but painfully expensive. You cannot love someone who expects you to be the replica of a memory they refuse to release. And walking away wasn't a failure. It was the only way to exist without becoming the shadow of another man.